All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Bethay. I am a first-year master's student in mechanical engineering here at UCLA. And today I'm going to be talking about last mile shared mobility and using RFID to improve parking logistics. So as I presented before, what I'm proposing is a parking solution. Um, with this solution, I see organizing shared electric scooters and bicycles through the use of RFID, which would be beneficial for communities as well as providers. Shared mobility providers can preempt government intervention through organization, and resistance from local governments will ease with a solution. I believe that if providers of scooters and bicycles come up with a parking solution, local governments would be more willing to work with these providers. I know currently bird scooters are currently banned from sharing from short-term sharing in San Francisco. So I believe with a solution like this, there could be more potential in the market. So this is actually already enforced in Singapore. So this company, Obike, they use a combination of GPS and RFID to enable bike sharing users to park in designated areas. They have about 1,100 parking zones throughout Singapore, and an alert is sent out by the system if any unused bicycle is not parked properly. So RFID will be utilized for this solution using a reader that checks for RFID tags on the scooters and bikes. Readers will notify the provider when scooters or bikes leave and enter the zone. And then in addition to preventing illegal parking, implementing RFID on shared mobility will also help deter theft. So I'm proposing to use active RFID tags. They have a longer read range than passive tags, so there's less need for readers within the parking zone. Also, readers can write data on the tag, such as the time and location of the last pickup and drop-off. So this map shows you Westwood. This is between Wilshire and Kinross, north of Wilshire. And this is actually the distribution of bird scooters yesterday morning at 11:30 a.m. So as you can see, they're kind of scattered throughout these blocks. There's not really any sort of like rhyme or reason. People just kind of leave them wherever they want. What I'm proposing is having zones. So you would have 2 close to Wilshire and Westwood, and then another 2 zones near Westwood and Lynbrook. So this actually helps the user since they have more confidence on where they're going to actually find a scooter. Especially in sort of more dense urban areas such as Westwood Village. It allows scooter availability to be more predictable for users. And this is actually showing the active RFID tags on the scooters themselves within the zones, and then 3 readers for the zones at Wilshire and Westwood, and then another 3 for the intersection at Lynbrook and Westwood. And this actually helps with the localization and triangulation of the scooters. And I'll discuss this more in depth later in the presentation. So in terms of generated data, so this is just an idea of what you would generate with the RFID tags. So you'd have a unique GTIN. This is a global trade identification number. Your time, so year, month, day, time, location, which I see, just correlating with a number. So one of the zones at Wilshire and Westwood would be location 54. And then pickup and drop off would just be a 1 or a 0, depending on if it's a pickup or drop off. For data analysis, so the provider can determine whether designated parking zones are actually working or not, based on if users are actually using them. So the user would also receive incentives based on if they take a scooter or bike back to a zone that's in need of hardware. The user could be provided incentives for doing so. So some of this analysis will be completed in real time, so instantaneous feedback on the hardware pickup and drop off. And then long-term analysis can be completed asynchronously. So short-term data will reside on the tag, if the scooter or bike is leaving a zone, and then once it comes back, it can be transmitted to the reader after parking. So availability is very important for the user experience. So what I'm envisioning is that these zones could be very dynamic and widespread. So you could have, they could change depending on user behavior. And also in dense urban areas, you could have, a zone at every building. So it makes scooters and bikes just as available, and also helps the user, again, with just predictability on where to find a scooter or a bike. So the RFID technology that I'm using is 915 megahertz active ultra-high frequency tags, according to the EPC global standard. The hardware, so you'll have stationary readers. So for example, this Impinj Speedway Revolution UHF RFID reader. So this reads frequencies in the 900 megahertz range. And then your tags themselves, your active RFID tags would be 915 megahertz. So this gives you a long range and is within the standard for frequency for active RFID in North America. So the middleware will interpret the global trade identification number, time, location, and pickup and drop-off data, which will be just a string of data that's sent to the reader. And then the middleware will actually interpret it, which will help facilitating the actual data analysis. In terms of the data standard, so use of EPC to uniquely identify each scooter and bike. This will be EPC class 4, which corresponds to active tags. So enough memory actually exists on the tags for short-term storage of data. And then once the scooter or bike returns to a parking zone, that data will be transmitted to the readers and then uploaded to the database in the cloud. For networking and wireless considerations, so since I am implementing this in a urban environment, most likely urban environment, and pretty long distances, the active RFID tags must be able to transmit data to readers at distances up to 100 meters. That would be the optimum distance to just facilitate the reading and minimize the amount of readers you actually need. And then readers must be able to transmit data to the cloud. And then for localization, you need 3 reference points. So that would be 3 readers for localization. So you can see on this diagram, A, B, and C, that corresponds to actual RFID readers. And this point P would correspond to a RFID tag. Where these readers, where their signals actually intersect, that is the point where they're able to localize tags. So for the Westwood case study, showing you the map again, I have the 3 readers close to the parking zones. So where their range actually intersects, that's going to be where you're able to localize the scooter or the bike, and actually pinpoint its location within a 3D space. So that allows you to determine whether the scooter or bike is actually within a designated zone. So for localization efficiency, you can actually implement other sensor networks with RFID to decrease the cost of the system and the amount of readers you need. One of these sensor systems is Zigbee, so this can be used in conjunction with the RFID tags and the readers. Advantages of this depend on the local requirements, including the hardware supply needs, such as how many scooters and bikes are actually needed in a certain area. And also the environment. So if you're in a dense urban environment, you have a lot of buildings and light posts and things that could intersect the signal. So in a dense urban environment, a sensor network might make more sense. And I'll actually go into this more in detail in the final report. In terms of security, so I was able to talk with the policy research team at BIRD, and the first thing they noted when I discussed my solution with them was, what are you going to do about theft and vandalism? So tags and readers, they definitely need to be secured and protected from vandalism since they are operating in a public space. So RFID tags could be secured to the hardware using bolts. They're relatively low security, run about $15 a piece, so you can just secure them to the hardware. The readers, however, they need to have an increased level of security. So I see that with the readers, possibly working with local governments to help secure the readers, and also possibly having local governments fund the readers themselves, since they are operating in a public right-of-way, and helping organize these solutions in the public right-of-way. And then the data itself, the time, location, and pickup, drop-off is relatively low security, so I don't see a big security need there with that data. For the cost estimation, so this system requires readers and tags. So UHF RFID reader, in particular this Impinj Speedway Revolution reader, will run you close to $1,600, and then the active RFID tags themselves average about $15 a piece. For my Westwood case study, so 6 readers implemented for 24 active RFID tags, so that's just under $10,000 total for the system, or about $400 per scooter. So this cost, $400 per scooter, definitely comes down the more solutions you have in the system. So, I believe that optimization is crucial in order to bring the cost down. So, larger parking zones where users, absolutely need them. And also just working across companies, so Bird, Lime, Jump, to implement this system. So for the cost-benefit analysis, so scooters themselves run about $500. The jump bikes, the electric bikes, are around $1,000. So for my Westwood case study with 24 Bird scooters, your total assets are about $12,000, so that's what you're protecting. And then the implementation would cost you just under $10,000. So you see that at lower levels of scooters or bikes, it's not as cost effective. But when you assume that Lime and Jump have, equivalent amounts of solutions in the area, and would be using these parking zones, your assets, go up to $24,000. But your implementation costs stays relatively flat. In addition, I think that with the readers, local governments would become involved and potentially fund these readers. So if that was the case, your cost per scooter and bike would come down to just the cost of the active RFID tag. All right, and that's all I had. Thank you for listening.